Welcome and how are you today? I hope that you are having a fantastic day. Today we're going to talk about cryptocurrency news. Bitcoin is up 83,000% since gold topped. Ooh, man, that's huge. Now, I want you to know I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This is my opinion. I am not smarter than you. You are smarter than you realize. Do not trust what I say. Do your own research. This is a very interesting article. They found that Bitcoin is up 83,000% since gold topped in 2012. And this article is about bullion versus Bitcoin. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of this section of the article. Basically, they're talking about a feud between two different people. One person is very, very pro-gold. The other person is very, very pro-Bitcoin. The feud is taking place out on Twitter, and one person's giving all their arguments about why they think gold is better. The other person is giving all their arguments about why Bitcoin is better. And if you're interested in drilling down into those details, I'll include a link so you can get to this article and pick up on that information. The part that caught my eye, that I found very interesting, though, was this part here in the article. Over the past 5 odd years, the chief executive of Schiff Gold, Peter Schiff, has been trashing Bitcoin. Over the years, he has called it many things, but one of the bullion proponents' main thesis is that Bitcoin is an asset with no inherent value that will eventually trend to zilch. So far, this has not been the case. In fact, analyst Rampage recently posted to Twitter that since 1 ounce of gold topped out at $1,800 7 years ago, during that same period of time, Bitcoin has gone up in value by 83,331%. In the same time frame, gold fell by 20%. A lot of people have seen Grayscale's advertisements and their commercials about getting rid of gold and buying Bitcoin, and this definitely makes a really strong case for it. While gold fell 20% and people lost 20% of their investment, with Bitcoin, it has gained 83,331% during the same 7-year period. So here's the real question that I always like to ask. Is that something, have we missed the boat? Is that 83,000% gain something in the history books and we'll never see it again? Personally, and this is my opinion, this is not financial advice, this is what I would tell my mom and tell if I was expressing my opinion. In fact, I have expressed this opinion to my mom more than once. But right now with Bitcoin, we're at a adoption of 0.4% of the market out there has actually adopted Bitcoin. That's similar to where the internet was back in 1995 when you had a dial-up modem and it ran over your phone lines in your house because nobody had cell phones at that point in time. I mean, the only people that bought cell phones are the ones that were going to spend $1,000 a month for their cell phone fee because they had some urgent need to be available all the time, whereas the rest of us, we had landlines because those were the inexpensive way to get a telephone. You couldn't get a cell phone for a decent price, and you were basically carrying around a small brick. Back in 1995, 1990, cell phone technology isn't what it is today, and the internet wasn't either. There were a very, very small amount of people that were actually on the internet, and most of those people accessed the internet through a service called America Online. Now, America Online is still out there. They still exist, but they're nowhere near the powerhouse they used to be in 1995, and that powerhouse only had 0.4% of the market, which is where Bitcoin is today. And if Bitcoin continues its current growth, it will get to a point where it sees mass adoption similar to the internet, where today the internet is being used by 60%. So if you think of that as a growth curve, we're still at the very, very bottom of the growth curve. We have not hit the vast, when you go from 0.4% to 60%, that's a huge amount of growth. And I have no idea how that's going to affect the price of Bitcoin, other than to say, I think that this 83,000% is not something that happened just in the past, but I think in the future, and this is my opinion, but I think in the future we're going to see similar gains, maybe even bigger gains than what's happened in the past. But again, that's only something that time will tell. That's just my opinion. So anyway, the article goes on. Rampage isn't the first to have drawn attention to what critics of Schiff see as flaws in the Bitcoin is inferior to gold argument. Anthony Pompliano, a former Facebook team member that has since become a cryptocurrency investor, accentuated that Bitcoin is the best performing asset of the past decade, before adding that the asset's scarcity and relative lack of penetration is likely to allow it to grow rapidly in the years to come. So the relative lack of penetration, he's referring to the very same thing I am, that and I mentioned 1995 just because that's the point when the internet had about the same percentage of the population using it as Bitcoin has a percentage of the population using it today. And I know that it took the internet 25 years to get to where it is today. But if you look at the way things are being adopted, such as how fast cell phones were adopted, or how fast, a lot of the different technologies that have come out in the last, 5 years, 10 years, the rate of adoption is significantly faster. And Bitcoin is one of those things that is very easy for adoption to increase. In fact, if you've been watching the cryptocurrency market very carefully over the last year, 2 years, 3 years more, we've seen an enormous amount of, I'm trying to think of the right words to say, but here's the best thing I can think of. Think of it like this. There was a point in time in the United States history when they were building this road infrastructure across the United States. And they built highways that stretched from California to New York, and built highways that stretched from the southern end of the country all the way up to the northern end of the country. And we built this huge infrastructure of roads so that automobiles could traverse all over the United States. Well, what has been happening in the last few years is people have been building a similar freeway for cryptocurrency, and it's still in the process of being developed. Some people are very impatient, and they think that creating these software infrastructures take very little time. Well, I have 20 years of experience with building computer programs, and I've been one of the guys on the front lines building software for the last 20 years. And I can tell you from personal experience, being on the front lines of actually writing programming code, that it takes a lot more time, effort, and sweat equity in order to create these massive programs that will be used by millions of people. Most people don't know that because they don't see the effort. For example, 3 weeks ago, the Bakkt exchange, BAKKT, got launched. And there was a lot of hoopla about institutional investors using Bakkt to purchase cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular. And while people saw this amazing exchange suddenly available on the market, they don't stop to consider it took 4 years to build and almost $500 million in a joint venture between the company that owns the New York Stock Exchange, Microsoft, and Starbucks. The three of them teamed together along with several other venture capital firms and a number of other investment hedge funds. That it took all of that effort with hundreds and thousands of man hours. I wish I knew the actual number. I'm sure it's approaching thousands of man hours in order to build the Bakkt exchange and make it go live. Now, you would have thought that since you've got Microsoft and the New York Stock Exchange people involved in this, that they could have just taken the code that runs the New York Stock Exchange or one of the many other exchanges that the company that owns the New York Stock Exchange, the Intercontinental Exchange, that they could have taken some of the other software they had running other exchanges and just simply used it for the backed exchange. Now, I'm sure to a certain degree that's exactly what they did. I don't know because I'm not behind the scenes, but I'm also know that Microsoft and whoever else they had working on the software code itself had to get in there, dig in deep, and make modifications that were specific to cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular in order to make the entire infrastructure function correctly. And that it takes a lot of time, testing, diligence, and just work in order to actually bring these things out to market. And so a lot of people don't understand what has to go on behind the scenes in order to build this stuff. But it makes perfect sense to me why it takes years to create it, not just, oh, let's do such and such and it should be out in 90 days. Anybody saying that, depending on what they mean by such and such, if what such and such is a simple change, okay, yeah, maybe you can get it out in 30 days or 90 days. But when you're talking about building a cryptocurrency exchange that's going to be regulated by the United States government and pass the regulatory authority approvals and have the kind of security that institutional investors require and demand so that their multi-million-dollar investments are protected, that's going to be something that you're going to take time building. It's going to be tested extensively before it's ever rolled out for actual production use. And so it makes perfect sense to me why it took over 4 years to build that exchange and bring it out to market. In the meantime, I want to thank you for listening to what I had to say. And if I can be of service to you in any way, please leave a comment below. Otherwise, like, subscribe, and hodl. I hope you have a fantastic day.